On behalf of our CEO, Peter Misford, and the team at Local Buy, we would like to welcome you to our pre-tender briefing. Today, Shane and myself will be your hosts, and we'll be actually taking you through the pre-tender briefing. And as Shane mentioned at the end, there will be an opportunity for questions. However, if you don't feel comfortable and asking questions within that forum, or you would just like to reach out to either Shane or myself, you're more than welcome to do so afterwards. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water, and community. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. So your category manager, which I'm sure you all know, is the very debonair Shane Grimstone. Shane is in charge of fleet and field services. Your customer relationship managers are my colleague, Audrey Dobell, who looks after North Queensland and Northern Territory, and myself, Liz McFarlane, who looks after South Queensland and Tasmania. So as we mentioned, please reach out to any of us at any time if you do have any queries. So why are you here today? The Local Buy pre-tender briefing is to provide you a potential, or in some cases, a current supplier, an outline of the arrangements and the streamlined process of becoming a pre-qualified supplier on a Local Buy arrangement. So we'll be going through who Local Buy is and what a pre-qualified arrangement we are looking at today. An outline of the categories, including the term of contract, the platforms we use for you to respond to this tender, such as APET 360, or moving forward with quotes, which is vendor panel, key things you need to remember when applying for a Local Buy tender, and of course, where you can go for support. Who is Local Buy and what is a pre-qualified arrangement? Well, Local Buy was established in 2001 by the Local Government Association of Queensland to meet the needs of local government with the procurement process. Our arrangements enable councils and government authorities to purchase a broad range of products and services from pre-qualified preferred suppliers without needing to undertake a tender process or request multiple quotes. We are a profit for purpose organisation, so all our profits are returned to our parent company, LGAQ. Local Buy arrangements are an exception under Section 234 of the Local Government Regulations for purchases of any size, whether it be $1 to $100 million. So Local Buy is establishing 4 new registers of pre-qualified suppliers under this local government arrangement for the provision of bulk fuel supply, fleet cards, oils, lubricants, AdBlue, and bulk storage and dispensing equipment to assist our purchasers in managing their individual requirements. The intent of this new local government arrangement is to provide councils and other purchasers in Queensland, Northern Territory, and South Australia with easy access to suppliers of these services by providing effective and streamlined procurement process whilst maintaining transparency and probity throughout. So who can use our arrangements? Of course, all 77 councils, as we mentioned, Regional Organisation of Councils, or ROCs, government-owned corporations, state government departments, agencies and statutory authorities, water and ports authorities, charities and not-for-profit organisations, universities and schools, Northern Territory and South Australian councils where they participate, and of course, large privately owned corporate entities who have been approved to use our contracts.
Thanks for that, Liz. And I'll just step through each of these contracts that we've got today. So the bulk fuels, which will cover obviously diesel, unleaded fuels, and a few others that I'll show in the list soon. Fleet charge cards. It's not limited to cards, of course. As we move into new technology, we'll be looking at online apps that take the place of plastic cards. Oils, lubricants, and AdBlue. And a new contract for bulk fuel and oil storage tanks and dispensing equipment. So this These 4 are going to market next Tuesday. You'll all be very busy on Tuesday, I'm sure. 1st of November, it'll be opening at just after midnight for those extra keen. So the current arrangement, which is an NPN arrangement, expires on the 31st of January 2023, and this new arrangement will start on the 1st of February 2023. It'll run for 3 years, and we have 2 by 3 years or 36-month extension options. So that will take it through up until the 31st of January 2032, of which, if we're really lucky, I won't be here. I shall be long retired at that point in time. So just a breakdown of the categories for each of these arrangements. These are by no means compulsory subcategories, but ones that you would be familiar with. So, your diesel, your unleaded, on-site delivery and off-site delivery, unmanned fuel stations, aviation fuels, marine fuel. We're also keeping hydrogen fuel into the mix, even though it's extremely early days for that. A number of our Indigenous councils in Western Queensland and Northern Territory require the opal fuel. We're keeping our mind open on synthetic fuels. I understand there's plans to produce some synthetic fuels here in Australia in the future. Liquid petroleum gas, both in bulk and cylinders. And we're also including the bulk storage and dispensing equipment in bulk fuels where a supplier may wish to do an arrangement with a council to supply the equipment, either an outright purchase or as part of a long-term fuel arrangement. So fleet charge cards, so changed the name, it used to be just fuel cards. So we're looking at obviously our regular fuel cards. We're looking at a co-branded fuel card down the track. But we're also looking to include service and repairs on a charge card, electric vehicle charge cards or apps, hydrogen fuel, cards to be used in unmanned fuel stations. And off those also they can, councils be able to buy small storage containers like jerry cans and pumps for fuels and oils. So what is new for that bulk fuel arrangement? So the first thing up is that Local Buy is going to be running some RFQs with selected ROCs or regional organisations or councils across Queensland, possibly also Northern Territory and South Australia will do likewise, where councils who have got some geographic boundaries there that they can make use of will join together and do sort of annual or biannual arrangements. So we'll be working with yourselves as suppliers and those councils to bring better delivery services and hopefully pricing. Those new categories that we've added, the unmanned fuel stations, aviation fuels, which dropped off in recent years, the hydrogen, the opal, synthetic fuels, LPG, and the bulk storage and dispensing equipment. So what's new in charge cards? So aside from the name change, one of the things that we're looking at is to go down the path of a co-branded charge card. This will not be part of the initial tender. It will be run as a request for quotation process down the track when we see who is on the tender and who wishes to participate. We need to look and see whether that's going to work, obviously, for a supplier and also whether it'll work for councils. So there's a lot of work to be done on that. But we're just flagging that up front. And the new categories, as I've said previously, co-branded cards, servicing, electric vehicles, hydrogen unmanned stations, etc. So the oils and lubricants, the categories in there, well, they're probably relatively straightforward there. Motor oils, marine oils and lubricants, aviation. Other lubricants and greases, AdBlue, of course. Other vehicle fluids such as, brake transmission, vehicle care products, and also bulk storage and dispensing equipment for oils and lubricants. And we're keen to see the recycling efforts in the oil, lubricants and other fluids. The new arrangement is the bulk fuel and oil storage tanks and dispensing equipment tender, and that'll be covering storage and dispensing equipment, bulk fuel, tanks. We're looking at both permanent and transportable in those tanks, metering equipment. We're also looking at the cleaning and maintenance of storage tanks and equipment. And the last one down there at the bottom, hydrogen fuel storage cells. Wish I knew a little bit about that, but we're covering that as a future option. So we have a few conditions of contract. So we have our general conditions of contract, and that'll set out the terms between you as a supplier and local buy as the agency. So it'll cover off on your contract number, commencement date, expiry date, etc. Any fees that are covered in there, and we'll show those in a few minutes. Contacts. There'll also be a separate purchaser conditions of contract. So this will be the contract terms between yourself and those council buyers. We'll also be listing the purchasers. So as Liz said earlier, you'll have the 77 Queensland councils. You'll also have, GOCs, the rock groups. I'm not expecting too many state government purchases because they do have their own arrangements in place. However, they still can purchase if it suits their needs. Obviously, Northern Territory councils and the Northern Territory also have other non-council government and non-government entities there. They will be listed. And in 3 of the 4 contracts, our colleagues in South Australia will be participating. So South Australia have elected to participate in the supply of bulk fuel, oils and lubricants and AdBlue, and bulk storage equipment and dispensing equipment. South Australia will not be participating in the charge card tender. So pricing, well, we're all keen on pricing and keeping prices down as low as possible. Well, we are at the local buy side of things and, of course, councils. So pricing's a little bit tricky, of course. In bulk fuel, we'll be looking to get some terminal gate prices or suppliers' verifiable price reference. In the other tenders, we'll be looking at some fixed pricing, some discount options that would be available. In the case of fleet charge cards, discounts that may be applicable, card fees, transaction fees. However, for most prices, we used to go out for 12 months and hold those prices. In this day and age, we're just looking at a 3-month contract term on that. That's mostly because, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of change in the next 3 or 4 years with energy prices in the world. Or typically they're heading up rather than heading down. So they're moving fairly quickly, which is why we've gone to the 3-month contract term. Of course, all purchasers can go out to market, typically through the vendor panel, and do a request for quotation process to get a better price. So quality assurance, workplace health and safety, and environmental. So seems to be fairly straightforward in this day and age. So all three of those are required. You don't have to be ISO or Australian standard. They're desirable, but we would certainly like to see a copy of policies and processes when you respond to the tender in that area. And being fairly specialised industry, all suppliers must comply with the Oil Code of Conduct that the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission have out there. I'm sure you know it far better than I do. So we'll be asking the question on there also. Minimum insurance levels. So we're looking at $20 million for public liability. Same again for product liability and professional indemnity insurance. Everyone must be covered for statutory work cover insurance also. So our fees, Local Buy have always operated on fees. That's the way we stay alive in our business. And the fees are paid by suppliers to be on the contract. So we have an initial verification fee for new suppliers, which is $500 plus GST in the first year. Existing suppliers, so those people are currently on a contract, will only pay $250 plus GST. In the second and subsequent years, the annual verification fee will be $250 plus GST by all suppliers. There are some exemptions, and I'm not sure that it's going to be particularly applicable for a majority of people here, but we work on some small business exemptions there. So 20 or less full-time equivalent staff, less than $2 million turnover in the previous financial year. Also, registered charities and Indigenous organisations are also fee exempt. You'll be requested to fill in a submission form declaration during your tender and submit that. So contract management fees, so they haven't changed. Matter of fact, I don't think they've changed in probably the last dozen or so years, but we're still looking at the 1 cent per litre for bulk fuels and charge cards. Obviously, electric vehicle charging is new, so we've kept that at a 1 cent per kilowatt hour for electric charging. The oils, lubricants and AdBlue remains at 2%, and the new bulk fuel and storage tanks and dispensing equipment comes in at 1%. We've just got a little calculation example there for bulk and cards, where that's fairly easy to read, hopefully. 8 invoices with total litrage of 40,000 litres. Then equates to a $400 contract management fee. When you report, you will, in the month, you will then receive an invoice from Local Buy for, in this case, $400. So it's back over to you to do all this part now.
Thanks, Shane. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple of the steps, how to get started. So obviously the first step is register in vendor panel. I imagine that the majority of you, if not all of you, are registered. So for those of you that aren't aware, vendor panel is the online electronic platform that we use for RFQs for both suppliers and purchasers. So if you're not already registered in Vendor Panel, the email or the web address, I should say, is there on screen. So once you've registered, you'll then appear in what we call Vendor Panel Marketplace. So Marketplace is not a list of pre-qualified suppliers. We say more that it is like a yellow pages. So some of your businesses will be included on Marketplace, but unless you engage under the local buy arrangement, you are not covered by the terms and conditions of the local buy contract or legislative exception, nor is council. So why do we use Vendor Panel? You're required to be registered in Vendor Panel to receive notifications of when local buy releases tenders. So you will also receive notifications from councils when they wish to purchase from you under a local buy arrangement. So come 1st of November, as Shane mentioned, you should get a push through from Vendor Panel to tell you that our new arrangements are open for tendering. Next step, register an APET 360. So APET 360, I'm not too sure if it's new to some of the suppliers. We had other means to tender through. So this is our electronic tender platform. So if you go to 360providers.apetsoftware.com.au, sign up ahead of time. However, those tenders will not be opened until 1st of November. There will be a copy of this presentation provided at the end with these email addresses on. So you'll go to this platform in the first instance to tender. However, once you've been approved as a pre-qualified supplier, your engagement through our contracts then will become through RFQ or a request for quote. So once you're pre-qualified, no need to tender again for that period of time that Shane mentioned. So ready, set, go. So what happens? So as we mentioned, register in Vendor Panel and APET 360. And then 1st of November, the tenders for local buy will be opened. And then when you're appointed, which is months 3, you'll actually be able to commence trading as a local buyer pre-qualified supplier. It's also very important once you receive your letter of acknowledgement that you have been accepted as a local buyer supplier, that you do as instructed and upload any insurances, etc., that are required of you, because until you do that, you are not visible to our buyers who are our councils, and they are unable to engage with you until you are visible. So keep an eye on your emails. So this is how it will come through during the tender process. You will get a notifications at APET software. So also check any of your spam emails, because if it's anything like my emails, I seem to get a lot more that land in spam and I forget to check them. So what do you need to remember? So give yourself enough time to complete the tender. You may update your submission at any time, even if you have completed the submission, until the tender closing day. That is the last day of the month at 2 p.m. Brisbane time. Keep an eye out, as we mentioned, for emails such as notifications at APET software, as well as your junk mailbox. Any questions too, once the tender has come to a conclusion. So for instance, Shane may send you a request for more information during that time to give some clarity around any of your answers. So all questions must go through the APET 360 forum, which in turn will be responded to by the relevant category manager during that tender process, which is Shane. So during the tender process, so that's start to finish and till the time of appointments, you must not make contact directly with the category manager, in this case, which is Shane. However, you are most welcome to reach out to Audrey or myself. So this is to make sure that we maintain the highest level of probity. So APET 360 will only open on the first day of the arrangement cycle, as we mentioned. And it's also a question that comes up that no one can actually see. When I say no one, I mean local buy cannot see any responses to those questions until that tender has closed. So please complete all the questions in full and supply all supporting documents as identified. Refer to websites such as localbuy.net.au and localbuyactive.com.au, or our social media for regular updates via LinkedIn and Facebook. And don't forget, we're here to help you. So please reach out to the customer relationship managers if you have any queries, or up until that tender process, please reach out to Shane.
Well, thanks, Liz. So that went quicker than I thought.
It did. So we've got a question there. We've had actually a couple of these questions. Yes, we will be sending out a copy of the presentation or the required links through.
Okay, so we got any other questions?
So nothing coming up at the moment. Here, okay, so we have a question here. The notification for tender being released went to the wrong person in my organisation. What we would request then, please, that you actually update your details through vendor panel to make sure that it is the correct contact. If you're experiencing any difficulty with the administrator from your business updating those queries, please send an inquiry through to our inquiry, ENQUIRY, at localbuy.net.au, and copy in Shane and just advise them that you'd actually like to update those details. That's, of course, if you're not the main administrator. Peter, do new suppliers pay the verification fees during the step 1 and 2? So you'll be asked to pay your verification fee if you are a brand new supplier before you commence the process, and you will be invoiced by LGAQ.
Just to clarify that, the fees are not invoiced until you're successful in the tender response. So you don't need to pay a fee to respond to the tender, but upon being successful and we send the invitation out, then at that point, on your acceptance, you will receive an invoice at that point.
Will there be an opt-in process for members on this agreement, or will they be forced to use vendor panel? I'll answer that, and then Shane can give more clarification if needed. So we recommend that vendor panel is used for transparency and probity reasons. However, engagement can be sought via email as well, but we must ask that the local buy contracts be stipulated on all correspondence. That's to, once again, provide transparency and probity around the contracts. Both ourselves and our buyers do go through strict auditing processes, and that's why we need to have that process strictly adhered to by putting those contract numbers on there.
Yeah, just clarifying that on Craig, that as we know, some councils have got terrible habits out there where they pick up the telephone and ask for a price, and they do that to 2 or 3 suppliers and never quote contract numbers. They just go and get a price, go ahead, and then later on questions are asked. So we will be continuing to encourage councils to use the vendor panel. Some councils have their own internal software systems to do quotation requests. The worst case is that they're using emails to get quotations. Where it comes to that, as well as council systems, they do need to use those new local buy contract numbers on them. Otherwise, they're not utilising the terms and conditions of the contract. And then somewhere down the track, when the QAO audit everybody, they'll be the ones that get in strife. So if I was a supplier, I'd be asking the question when a quotation request comes through that's outside the vendor panel, whether this is the local buy contract or whether it is they're doing their own thing. Any other questions?
Okay, we have one there from Mark. Can you confirm the amount of councils actively procuring these products via local buy and current revenues per category? I'll pass that one over to Shane. Do you like that handball, everybody?
Excellent, yes. So, off the top of my head, I can't give you the exact number of councils, but in Queensland, it's around about 1/3 of the councils are currently using the local buy arrangement, which is an NPN arrangement. I'm certainly not in a position to give any current revenues for that. So just as a reminder, there's 77 councils in Queensland. So if you can do the quick division, 3 into 77 will give you about 1/3 of, that'll give you the approximate numbers.
We don't seem to have any more questions. Before we close the webinar, was there any other questions, please?
Okay, so look, at any time during your tender submission, as Liz said, you're free to ask questions. Be mindful, though, that a question that is asked will be responded to, and all tenderers will see the question and answer. So certainly don't give your company name or your name in the question, because when we respond, we will be responding with your question and the answer, and then everybody gets to see that. So please don't use your company name. We will see who it is because it'll come through under your name, but don't put it in the question. All right, well, that looks like all we've got there today. Thank you very much for those who are participating. We will be taking this recording and sending it out to everybody that's that registered to attend. I'll also do a PDF version of this PowerPoint and send that out to you also so that you've got a hard copy, easy reference for the future. So if we have no more questions, thank you all very much and wish you a good day. Hang on, we've got one more. Somebody's late.
3 months was minimum contract.
So no, Peter.
Is there a maximum?
3 months is the period of holding your prices on that one. So if you've quoted, $10 for something, you hold that price for 3 months, and then you have the opportunity to review after that. Probably a little less applicable in your situation, Peter. That's very applicable to your normal goods and consumables.
And also something that I didn't mention is part of these active arrangements through Vendor Panel, every 3 months you will get a notification to say that those tenders are out in the market again. So it's not a case of you having to re-tender. It's a case of, because you've got those particular categories ticked in the background of Vendor Panel, you receive notifications. So once you've been appointed, you are appointed. You don't need to reapply for another 9 years, or in the unlikely event that that tender is called earlier.
All right. As I said, thank you very much for your attendance, and look forward to receiving lots of tender responses in November. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.